going on? Happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of Happy Phenomenal Fatherhood Friday. I'm here with another fellow phenomenal father on this Friday named Jeremy Hall. Everybody say what's up to Jeremy in the comments right now, and birds will fly. Let's go. So we're here at the Free Podcast Center here in the Woodlands, Texas. And we're just here to bring more value today. I wanted to give you guys a quick update. If you have a question about anything that we talk about today, we got a couple stuff to go over. Go to phenomenalfatherhood.com, look for the Ask a Dad button, drop your question in there. There's going to be a lot of stuff that we talk about, including child support. I know a lot of dads have specific questions with specific situations. So that'd be a great place to start. And guess what? We'll feature you on the podcast, answer your question live. So with that being said, let's jump right into today's topics. Jeremy Hall.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Tillman. And thank you for that intro. It is good to be back. Today, as Tillman has already mentioned, we'll be discussing child support, a little bit about the origins of child support. Why do we need it? What is it? Where to go to find out about it? Both the statute and the Attorney General's office. Second segment, the election. It's the topic du jour right now. Trump versus Kamala. It's November 5th, but early voting is going on right now. How do you vote? How do you find out where to vote? What's on the ballot? And then how do you make educated choices? And then finally, in the third segment, we will do some current events. The Menendez Brothers series on Netflix has been generating a lot of interest. Who's profiting from that? How can people profit from ill-gotten gain? And what has been the effect on those brothers and their incarceration? We'll talk about Diddy. He's been indicted. How did things go so sideways for him? How did he get away with so much? It's another R. Kelly scenario where it's just so dumbfounding how all this could have unfolded in broad daylight with him being a celebrity. And then finally, Halloween. It's also coming up. It's next Thursday, and we'll talk about Fall Festival at Woods Edge and all the fun that's going to happen there. So first, let's talk about child support. Child support, as many of you know, is assessed by the state of Texas Attorney General's office, and it's to enforce every parent's obligation to support their children, both financially for basic needs and medically through medical insurance or other means. And so the Attorney General's office will send out letters. If you have a child support arrangement currently, they'll send out child support review letters saying, do you want to review income, make changes? A lot of you fathers and mothers are probably familiar with those. If you don't have any child support arrangement, even if you don't have an affidavit of parentage from the hospital or the father's name's not on the birth certificate, they can set up paternity testing and subpoena the father and get a child support account set up. And it's a state enforced obligation. So, and we can talk later about why do we need it? Is it a good thing that we have the state involved in enforcing the rights of children against essentially the parents, making the parents take care of their children to a certain standard? It involves the exchange of money. Child support has to be paid to the state directly. So like anything that's government run, it has its handicaps, but ultimately, is it a good thing for children? So before I go into the statute and how everything's calculated and what percentages are applied, you tell me, what are some common questions or common misconceptions out there about child support that parents have?
I think one of the biggest ones that I've heard from a lot of dads is the misconception that only dads can be on child support.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned through going through 2 custody battles and 2 child support hearings is that it really just comes down to conservatorship. So can you
Mm-hmm.
speak to that a little bit more just to put that at ease?
Yes, conservatorship is the determining factor of who pays child support. It's not gender specific. It's not always the dad. It's not even always the primary wage earner. Although, if you're not the primary wage earner, you're probably not going to qualify to pay child support to the person who is earning a lot of money, who has possession. And so that's the key on who pays who. If you have what is commonly known as joint custody or joint managing conservatorship, then both parents are involved in the decision making of important things when it comes to the kid, where they go to school, how they go to the doctor, things like that. So when you have joint managing, one parent is possessory and the other parent is the primary. And the primary parent is the parent who the child lives with. And it's ultimately tied to the school zone. A lot of parents decide, where do I want my child to go to school? So that's who the child will live with, that parent that's in the best school zone. But it's the right to determine the primary residence of the child. And that's one of those game pieces that can only land on one spot. You can't share that. There's no joint anything when it comes to the primary custodian. There has to be one. The child has to live somewhere. So one parent, as the person, the age of majority, the child can't decide where the residence is. So one parent has to decide. So that person is the primary conservator with the right to receive child support from the possessory conservator, who obviously has a possession order. And we can talk in another episode about the standard possession order and rights of possession. But that's where conservatorship defines child support. The primary receives child support from the possessory, and the possessory, the one with visitation rights, can be either the mom or the dad, and it can be the primary or the non-primary wage earner.
Love it. Love it. Great explanation. And I think that clears up a lot of misconception out there that that's kind of like, you know, a cut and dry thing, especially in the South. Like a lot of guys that I run into, they're just like, oh man, like I'm just so terrified of like going to court for this because they are in fear that they're never going to see their child again or have to pay $1 bajillion in child support. And that's just not the every situation case. So I think that it's important to highlight that. Another thing that I've really been seeing a lot is just how can they be prepared? You know, like if they get served with papers, they're at work, they get served, then what's like their next step?
First of all, answering is key. Hiding, you're not going to get anywhere with that. That's a lot of dad's instinct, is just to say, oh, well, I'm going to no show or pretend like I didn't get it or dodge service or something. Eventually, it's going to, the AG's office has got all day, all eternity to find you, and they will find you. So there's no need to not answer, to avoid responsibility. Come to court. If you can afford to hire an attorney, obviously that's good. If you're not in a position to, there is an attorney there waiting for you in court. They're not going to be on your side. They don't represent either party. They represent the state and the state's interest in the child. And so that person will actually write up orders and tell you how the law works and everything like that. But again, they're not your advocate. So you can go basically without having an attorney, without hiring counsel. You can go pro se because there's somebody there who knows the rules. But if you want to be prepared and you've gone to an attorney, or you are just starting out, can't afford to hire an attorney, either way, start out by going to the Attorney General's website. There's a phone number there that you can call, and they'll help you answer questions, get you set up with a case. You can also set one up online, and you start by, like every website, completing a profile. So you can register for an account. You can actually set up a child support, and they'll match it up with the order if you have an order upcoming. But the Attorney General's website, TXOAG, it's a government website. You can Google the Texas Attorney General and then click on the first site that comes up, .gov, and click on the Child Support Division. There, and we may be able to put up a copy on the screen, you'll find a button that says Monthly Child Support Calculator. And that's probably the most helpful thing that you can do to be prepared for child support specifically, because child support is statutory, so it's based on your annual salary, your income. So you start with annual, then you break it down to monthly, and then you take deductions for taxes, for medical expenses, and you get monthly net resources. And then you apply a percentage pursuant to the statute based on how many children you have before the court and how many children you have outside the court that you're obligated to pay child support for. So just to focus on the calculations in the website, if we have that up, you'll see at the very top is monthly gross income, and I plugged it in. So you can do this online. You can go to the AG's website, click on child support calculator, plug in your income. If you get paid any which way, if you're a 1099, if you get paid monthly, biweekly, they have it all in there for you. So you don't have to, you can start exactly where you're at with your income. You plug it in, it'll calculate your taxes and your deductions. And by the way, if you hire an attorney, if you come see me, I have a spreadsheet built. So I'll send you a form, and then we can fine tune and calculate what your obligation should be based on our own sheet. But this is a perfectly fine tool to use, and it's a great place to start to calculate your child support obligations. If you make 100K a year, you're going to plug in 8,333.33 a month, and then it's going to deduct all of your federal income taxes to get your monthly income. It's going to deduct any other medical support deductions. So it'll ask you, are you paying medical support and how much to get net resources? Then if you have one child, you're going to pay 20% of those net resources that you just calculated to the primary parent as your child support obligation. That is due and payable to the state disbursement unit, and a wage withholding order shall be issued in each case, the statute says. So there's no way around getting your wages garnished if you owe child support. And I tell dads, it's actually a good thing. It's just like anything when you're on probation or parole, or you have any ongoing excess government obligation where you have to check in or be monitored or watched. You don't want to mess that up, and you don't want to be constantly in anxiety about, have you done everything right? Have you paid on time? Have they acknowledged it? So the wage garnishment thing, as an allergic reaction as some dads have to that, it actually just takes the matters out of your hands and saves you from all the back and forth of, oh, I didn't get it on time. Oh, well, it's gone through the state. It's out of your hands at that point. It never even hits you. So when you set it and forget it, you set it up once and it comes out. And not that I'm encouraging you to avoid responsibility, but nobody can come pointing the finger at you and saying that child support is late or it's not enough,
Mhm.
because the mechanics are already in place and it has basically nothing to do with you now. It's just getting taken out of your paycheck. But it's interesting that the statute says that it shall be issued, because I used to fight to keep wage withholding orders out. And in general, it's good if you have control over your own resources and let dads do their own thing. But so many ran into problems basically arguing with the state. They have the register and the amount that you owe every month. So if it doesn't show up, you're deficient and they can jail you, fine you, jail you, do a lot of bad things to you for not paying child support. So overall, I would emphasize, just make sure that you're current on your responsibilities. Don't avoid responsibility. It may be scary at first, but call and talk to someone that you trust about it. Write us in the comments. You've mentioned some ways to contact us, and do your homework. The AG's website is a great place to start.
Yeah, and then just to clarify for any of the dads out there, when he was referring to the AG's website, that stands for the Attorney General. Also, just a quick note, as somebody who has paid child support before, if you default on your child support, it can affect your credit. So a lot of times that's not a very well known thing. But if that does happen and you get those things corrected, it is possible. I'm living proof that it can be taken off of your credit, which was a big lie that was told to me, that I'm living proof that is a lie. So if you're thinking that it's not, that you definitely can.
Hmm.
So that's really good to clean up. What was the next item?
Um, well, we can talk for a minute about any other questions on the. Well, I wanted to provide a quick update. Let me say on the child support statute. So, if you go to the guidelines or the statute on child support, and you look at the monthly net resources percentage calculations, there were some changes that were enacted
Mm,
in 2021
yep.
that I wanted to hit on really quickly. First of all, there's a maximum. So it used to be 7,500 a month in net resources was the cap, and then above that, you don't take anymore. The percentages have a maximum too. If you're on the tables, if you have 7 children before the court and 7 children with other moms outside the court, 32% is the max that you can pay for one child, and 40% if it's your seventh child with the same mom before the court. Down all the way to 13% if you only have one child before the court, but you have 7 children outside the court. So there's boundaries on how much you can pay in child support. There's also caps on your income. It used to be 7,500. It's been updated to match the Texas register, so it can be matched for inflation every 6 years. So you want to check back on that. But if you happen to be very wealthy, there is a cap now, and it's $9,200 a month. Um, the other thing that was instituted, or another thing of note, is that there's now a low income support metric, not only a cap, but if you make less than $1,000 a month, if your net resources are less than a grand a month, then you have a different scale. So one child is 15% of net resources, two is 20, 3 is 25, and then on up. You also have a new multiple children before the court scale, and so when you have one child before and then two children outside the court that you're responsible for, you also have a low income scale for that now. So
Mm.
that's something that helps low income dads. Another thing that I'll just touch on really quickly is that it's net resources are looked at a little bit differently. So there's some new factors that the court can consider in looking at net resources. And one thing that you can't consider is intentional under or unemployment due to incarceration. So an argument in child support a lot of times, first of all, in possession or primary. Oh, well, I want to be primary because I want to receive child. I don't want him to be primary because I don't want to pay him child support. So the fight over custody kind of swings on who I don't want to give up custody because I don't want that child support check to stop coming, just like Kanye West, gold digger. Not everybody just spends it on healthy food for the baby. There's other things. If you're reliant on that as monthly income, you don't want to use that. So unfortunately, a custody battle often hinges on who's receiving child support. But if you are scheming and you're trying to deflate your income artificially so that you don't pay as much, and what dad wants to pay the maximum amount of child support to someone they formerly had a relationship with, or not every relationship is bad, but usually dads are trying to hold down their income, at least to accurate value. And if you're trying to go low, then you can be, the state will find out that you're intentionally. And so some dads will even work less. They'll take less jobs. They'll do things that their income reflects less so they can hit that number, get a low support number locked in, then ramp back up to making. So they passed a statute, they passed an update that says that incarceration cannot count as a factor for under unemployment. So good things if you've been in some trouble and are looking for a second chance, or if you're low income, they now have things to make child support even less scary for you and have less unfair and unjust outcomes. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that a lot of guys that are low income, a lot of guys that are like dodging this responsibility feel the exact same way. So I'm really glad that you touched on that and you had a chance to like kind of clear that up because that's like a really big misconception. Why do you think they added the caps?
Well, the cap was changed to a floating amount, I guess, to better match inflation. But that's kind of the rich dad thing. They put in a low support amount because there used to be a minimum amount on the child support calculator that you could go for net resources. But now they made it statutory and created a whole different scale. The state spends untold resources chasing down what people call deadbeat dads, people who are avoiding responsibility, who have never paid, who have arrearages over decades of unpaid child support that if you ever do pop up and actually come back on the grid, you will get put away for. So you don't want to be using a fake name. People do all kinds of stuff to avoid responsibility, but you have that hanging over your head. So there's hundreds, thousands. I don't know the numbers on the cases out there. What this does is it provides access, kind of similar to the dreamers, but people who are out there who have avoided responsibility for so long, come back in. We want to make this more accessible. It's not good for anyone, the moms, the state, or anyone else to have these dads out there avoiding responsibility. So if that's you, we would encourage you. There's lawyers, lawmakers, and people out there that are doing their best to make things more accessible for you.
Hmm. And if that is you, you can go and submit a question on Ask a Dad anonymously, and then you can get the question
Yes.
answered if it's something that we didn't touch on here. But, I think the moral of the story is avoiding responsibility helps no one. And
Yes.
more times than not, I can tell you from experience, it's not as scary as you think. So I'm not talking about something that I never been through before. I've definitely been through it before, so I can understand the fear. But at the end of the day, some of the best things in life are on the other side of fear, and the people that benefit the most are the little ones that are our future that we care about the most. So if you work with the system and figure out how you guys can work together as a partner instead of just viewing it as an enemy, you might get a lot further. The children may get a lot further. You might end up having a better, at least commendable relationship with your former ex or a person you was in a relationship with.
Amen to that. I mean, God can work through anything, even through child support proceedings. So, God, will use that for good in your life if you show up and listen for his voice. So that's great. I'm so glad you shared that. You got two child support court veterans right here. Both have, I forgot about your experience. Both Tillman and I have been to child support court. I will say myself many times representing people. It can be scary. It's kind of like the DMV. You're going to have to wait a long time and bring a bunch of paperwork. But go, like you said, man, the beauty in that is ultimately it's all about your kid. So if you
Mhm.
can see it as an experience for the betterment of your child, ultimately, yeah, it can be a great thing.
Awesome.
Okay, I think that's all the time we have for child support. We are going to flip it over to segment two and talk
Mhm.
about the election.
All right, so switching gears a little bit, super hot topic right now with the election going on. Everybody's talking about it. It's all over mainstream media. So we're just going to touch on that a little bit.
Yes, thank you. MontgomeryVotes.org if you're in Montgomery County, HarrisVotes.org if you're in Harris County. That's where you can go to find the election administrator website and to plug in your name and birth date. When you do, you will get a screen that shows you all your relevant voting information. I've got mine here, and you may be able to see a mock up of that. You're going to see when, where to vote. For the current election, early voting is going on now. Saturday and Sunday weekends, the polls are open. Around here, the South County Community Center is open. If you're over on the east side, the Spring Creek Greenway and Mitchell Library is a new polling location. Friday, November 1st is the last day of early voting, and then election day is November 5th. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on election day, and that's a different poll than early voting. So make sure you look it up. When you go to that website and plug in your information, you're going to see your registration status, polling locations, times, and then you can click to download a sample ballot. All the candidates and races, propositions, anything else that's on the ballot, all the way from the presidential race. Ted Cruz is in a dead heat with Colin Allred, I hear at the moment. I really have not appreciated a lot of the negative back and forth I've seen in that race. All the way down on page 2 to Conroe ISD trustee. So let's talk about it. In this election or in any election, we've heard pastors recently say, don't leave your faith behind when you go to the polls. God calls us to be active in our faith as Christians and vote with our faith, through our faith. So, how do you make decisions, or how can we as Christian fathers make decisions or use our votes wisely in an election, especially one that's as important as this one to a lot of people?
Yeah, I think that the first thing really is just praying for discernment, so that you know the voice to actually listen to. But at the same time, one thing I like to highlight is that, faith without works is dead. So doing your research nowadays in 2024, there's so many podcasts, so much media coverage. There's different places you can find anonymous voices everywhere. You know what I mean? And just get an idea of what's going on both sides of the table, and with the proper discernment and actually taking the effort to get the information that are would allow you to make an informed decision, then I think that's the best route to go.
Hmm. When you're evaluating after you've looked at the candidate and listening to them directly, I think is good. If you're listening to people talk about what the candidate says versus listening to what the candidate says, even though the candidate is obviously polished and having some filter on their messages, I think that's the way to go, direct to the source. I wanted to ask you though, can God use someone who is not a Christian, who's evil, for instance, in a position of leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. I think last time I was in church, like Pastor Jeff said, regardless of who the president is, at the end of the day, like the person that we get our power from is the Lord. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, like whatever the outcome is, it's not your source.
Hmm.
So I think realizing that is important, and then just going from there is the most important piece.
Amen to that. I think prayer is so important. And yeah, there's examples in the Bible of God using evil rulers or speaking to them, and his will be done in the end. We know the end to the story already. I like the who is God speaking to? I mean, God can speak to anyone, but really just imagining the candidates and imagining God speaking directly to them, and how would they react when there are they? Can I imagine them listening for God's voice? But praying about it, I think, is the most important thing, and I look forward to praying and discernment. Having a plan to vote, early voting, that's a good place to get in there. South
Yep.
County Community Center is a lot of fun, a lot of candidates out there shaking hands. So make sure if you have any questions about voting, if you want a sample ballot, a lot of people recommend lists of candidates. I like recommending a process more. I think that's a good thing for us to recommend is not only voting, but just engaging in the process. Okay, any questions? We'd love to answer those. I want to flip over to current events really quickly and touch on a couple of things. The Menendez Brothers, the Monsters series on Netflix. My wife and I started watching it, and I could not stand it. It was just too graphic for just something I didn't want to be filling my mind with, and it's hugely popular. And so that made me think, maybe some of or a lot of us thought we learned in law school that you can't profit from ill-gotten gain. You can't be a criminal and then come out and profit from your criminal enterprise by selling books or making movies or, I don't know, consulting other criminals with the criminal consulting business. So, this law or these laws that are active in 40 states right now are called the Son of Sam laws, and they were named after David Berkowitz, the Son of Sam killer. That summer in New York, he got a lot of book deal offers after he served his time. And so, what I found out doing a deeper dive is they're not very enforceable.
Mm.
There's the free speech, a lot of the legal challenges have struck down those Son of Sam laws and said free speech overcomes. So it's not that criminals can't profit from the publicity of their misdeeds. So in this case, a lot of media attention, a lot of articles coming out about the family and their displeasure were being unfairly portrayed. So just this morning, it broke in an article that we may be able to show you, and we'll leave a link to. They are the brothers, the Menendez brothers, Lyle and Eric, are being resentenced according to the recommendation of the Los Angeles County District Attorney. And it's happening in 30 to 45 days. So their attorney says they
Wow.
could be out by Thanksgiving. And it's due to the publicity of the series, which was due to a huge movement on TikTok and Instagram to bring attention to their case and to get them released. So Netflix picked it up, the whole Monster series. So the family's really mad. One of the brothers came out with a statement published on his wife's Twitter, and the series debuted this September, by the way. So it's really recent. And September 20th, Eric, one of the brothers, released a statement: blatant lies, ruinous character portrayals. A couple days later, the family victimized by this grotesque shock drama, calling out the one of the writers himself, Ryan Murphy, and Murphy says this is the best thing that's happened to the Menendez brothers in 30 years because of the public. So I thought that was so fascinating how there could be
Mm.
those two different opinions. So follow the money, looking at the Son of Sam laws. It wasn't that the Menendez, so they mad, right? They're not profiting from but ultimately it's brought about the resentencing. The brothers could get out. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing in and of itself is a different thing. But ultimately, this Netflix series and really the grassroots campaign, interestingly enough, through TikTok and picking it up has brought attention, ultimately, we presume, leading to their release or at least another chance at it. But the Menendez brothers and the family are not making money off of this. They weren't consulted. They didn't have any production rights and weren't even interviewed for it. Netflix didn't need them to be a part of it. So Netflix can make money off it. And honestly, the Menendez family and even the brothers possibly could have made money off of it if they'd had the wherewithal to do it. But they didn't. They're mad. They don't have a hand in how they're portrayed. And I'm not saying that they're wrong for that, but ultimately you look at what people are saying, it's brought about a chance for their release. So
Mhm.
I tend to see the side of the producer. What do you think?
I think at the end of the day, if you're locked up and you got an opportunity to get out in 30 or 45 days, that's probably the best news you've gotten in the past decade. So, as mad as you want to be, there got to be a little lightening of that mad because you're getting your freedom to actually go out here and generate some income and revenue. And with TikTok and everything else nowadays, man, them guys could literally go on social media and make 10 videos and get a bajillion views and
Oh
all of
my
a sudden get
goodness.
sponsorships for all kinds of stuff. So, it's not about a lack of resources, it's just a lack of resourcefulness.
Yeah,
So,
man, that's a good insight. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the rehearing and, of course, to them after they get out. Okay, last thing, person who may be about to go away, about to get locked up, actually he is locked up, has been denied bail twice. Diddy, he was indicted, all this stuff coming out, horrible about how he treated people, the videos of Justin Bieber. How can this happen? How can so many people have been complicit? All these same people who want to be on the list, bragging about being on the list, have to be on the list now, don't want to be on the list. Just
mhm,
like the Epstein list. In retrospect, when the party is exposed, don't know what nobody want to be on the list, right?
mhm,
Before it's cool to be on the list. Now nobody wants to be on Diddy's list, just like they didn't want to be on Epstein's list. Everybody was on the list, but they didn't go, or they left early, or they didn't see anything. But how can this have gone on for so long? How can no one have seen? How can no one have told anyone? And how can no action have been taken? It makes me a little bit disgusted at all the outrage now because there is so much outrage. Why wasn't there so much when it was actually happening? And how can something like that happen? It's another R. Kelly. How do these things keep happening? And why is it human nature to behave so differently in a
mhm.
parallel with the Menendez? Their attorney gave them access to all the family funds. They ran around spending money like crazy after their parents died. Their fortunes, one of the reasons they got caught before the will was even read, before anybody even found it, because their attorney was coerced by the brothers to give them access. So it's just people in those positions. They're the gatekeepers. It's the same
Mhm.
thing with R. Kelly. It's the same thing with Diddy. When nobody's the wiser and somebody puts pressure on you to take an action, you may be embarrassed later. What are you doing when nobody's watching? We know as Christians that someone is always watching, and he's present with us always. I think keeping that top of mind, make sure we never end up on one of those lists.
For sure,
Okay.
for sure.
Quick plug for the fall festival. We are having it this Friday. Halloween's coming up. What are you being for Halloween, Tillman?
Myself. But with
S-
that being said,
Saturday, October 26th, 4 to 7 p.m. Okay.
yeah.
That's all I got.
So you have to watch the replay. We'll see y'all next Friday.
See ya.